with me today, I have executive producer and star Pamela Jane Morgan, writer and co-producer Seth Chitwood, and director and co-producer Jordan Ansel. How are you guys all doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing
How are
great,
you,
thank
Emily?
you.
I'm doing well, thank you so much.
Good.
So, I guess we'll start with Jordan as the director. Would you like to start about talking about the film, The Principal's Assembly?
Sure. Pamela and I had worked together previously as sort of, on just career stuff. And she wanted to make a film as a starring vehicle for herself. And Seth had written this beautiful script. She asked me to direct and produce. And I've always wanted to work with Pamela because she's so talented. And I read the script, and there was no way that I couldn't make this film with them. So I signed on, and what really attracted me to it was the subject matter of dealing with mental health and addiction, regarding tragedy. For myself as a filmmaker, I would like to be able to do work that will spark conversations about things that people don't necessarily like to talk about. So that's what really attracted me to this project, and of course, working with the two of them. So.
That's lovely. I love, I watched the film. I do think it touches upon very important topics, and I do think that they're very important to talk about. So, Seth, with that said, what inspired you to write this storyline?
Yeah, well, at the time, I was in my last semester at the American Film Institute Conservatory for screenwriting, and I was in LA, and I was talking to Pam and telling her about my experience, and she had said, I have this story I've always wanted to tell. It was like 27 years in the making about.
Longer than that.
Longer
30
than that.
plus.
And kind of told me about it. And I was like, that's really intriguing and very interesting. And then I actually came back for spring break in March of 2020. And we were sitting in this very room that we're in right now. Right before the pandemic was a thing. It was like they were talking about it being a pandemic, but they were like, oh, we'll see what happens. And we were talking about it and brainstorming the characters. And then, of course, two days later, it was like, there's a global pandemic happening.
Yeah.
And the rest was kind of
history. It's kind of like a perfect storm, because I had taken, as Jordan alluded to, I had taken a master class with him. And during that class, he encouraged us to create our own content. And that was never on my radar. But then once the pandemic hit, as an actress, I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I keep the muscles going? And maybe this is the time to tell the story of the treatment that I wrote way back in 1990 when I was at New England Institute of Technology in their video and radio production program. And knowing Seth and knowing that he was studying screenwriting, his master's degree at AFI, it was just all the pieces came together. And that's how we eventually worked on the script. And then,
and Pam and I had worked together before. We knew each other. And I just want to say, not to upset Pam, but that was 1990. I was born in 1991. But whatever.
Oh, whatever. But anyway.
But yeah, I love writing stories about strong, empowered women. I had already kind of come from a background of writing short films and also digital series about women specifically. And so it was right up my alley to kind of write a piece like this. And I really connected to it really early on.
So that's what we did. We worked on it the summer of 2020. And then once we all started to kind of test the waters relative to getting back to, I say normal life, but it still isn't normal. That's when, I talked to Jordan about producing, and he expressed interest in directing. And that's how we all came together.
And I'm thankful, because I was like, it grounded me, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was like in the middle. I think everyone during the pandemic was like, what does this mean?
I know.
And it was great to be working on this project through the whole beginning of the pandemic, to be really honest. Yeah.
Yeah, same. It was such a wonderful experience to just like be among people making art. And it was very cathartic for me, having been shut in for a year as everybody else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was just going to say, Seth, how dare you put Pamela on blast like that? You are lovely and you look fantastic. But well, with that said, though, so when exactly did you guys film this?
We filmed in April of 2021.
Okay.
And we filmed for 4 days locally. As a matter of fact, if I may just add this, on 2 of the days we shot in the high school that I went to. And 3 months later, the building was demolished and they built a new high school. And I hadn't been back in my high school for quite some time. So not only was it wonderful to just walk down those hallways again and look at the lockers and just everything, but then to have it gone, I said, I'll always have this memory that my last time in the high school, I made a short film. Do you know what I mean? And so that's, yeah.
But yeah, definitely shooting in April was when we were still trying to figure out the pandemic, and we were working with SAG actors. We were trying to follow the SAG rules and still trying to figure out. I mean, I think that the vaccination had only just come out 2 or 3 months earlier, so there was still discussion about who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, who can wear a mask, who can't wear a mask. So there was a lot of challenges right around that time.
Yeah, it was, technically, I mean, we would be considered a pandemic film because not many productions were happening.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I got, at that time, as Seth had indicated, I got my second shot for the vaccination like a week before I had to leave, and still not knowing if, what the situation would be for the entire cast and crew, and just hoping that things would go well because, short films, independent films, any kind of delay in filming can cost you the project because it's people's schedules and things like that. So we're very lucky. We got very.
I remember talking to Jordan. I don't know if you remember this, Jordan, but I was saying like we need to be a role model for especially the independent world because we were one of the first few productions in our area to kind of be on set. And if we broke rules or we got COVID, knock on wood, we need to set an example for everyone. And so I really felt like we really need to take responsibility to show that you can still make film and art but still be responsible at the same time when it came to COVID.
Yeah, and it's a real testament to the entire cast and crew because we're able to really follow the COVID protocols to the letter. And it's still, it didn't delay the production as sometimes it can. There were days where we had, I think our longest day was 12 hours, but we got out, we had some very short days because everybody was in such sync. So that's just a testament to everybody coming together to make it work.
Yeah.
It's true.
And her, she brought her A game too. So.
Absolutely.
We all brought our A game. We all brought our A game.
Pamela wakes up with the A game already on.
Yeah.
So.
we're the A team, the A+ team.
Yeah. Could I be Mr. T? Because I have the same haircut.
So, with that said, do you guys have any future plans for this film?
We do. I mean, the dream always exists that someone will see it and pick it up or say, hey, we want to turn this into a feature. But I will tell you, after screening it to our cast and a few of our crew members back in June, there was a woman there who attended with, I think it was one of our background actors and she's a psychologist. And she said, did you ever consider using this in a school setting? Because not only is it's not the typical, film, if you will, about don't do drugs, don't drink. This is a movie, first of all, which is going to capture their attention, but it's also about the death of a high school student and how the principal handles it. So it's a little more germane to a school setting. And, a bell went off. It's like, oh my God, like this really could. And how great would that be if we can truly potentially affect the lives of teenagers, especially. And then when we screened at the New York Long Island Film Festival, the mayor of Lindenhurst, New York, where the festival was held, was there. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, I don't know what plans you have for this film afterwards, but we've recently put together a task force relative to, the drug and alcohol abuse in the community at large. He said, I would love to build this into our platform. And it was like, that's it. That's what I know what we're going to do with this film afterwards, because how many potential people can we affect with this? I just think it's a brilliant idea, and I'd really like to think that this might resonate with young kids.
And I get a little emotional because like my aunt died in a drug. She was abusing drugs at the time, got in a car accident. When I was growing up in Barrington, Rhode Island, we had several deaths in Barrington of drunk driving. Teenagers. One from my grade, two from above my grade. So it was a constant thing growing up in Barrington to have that over our head of this epidemic that was going on of teens drinking and then getting into car accidents and having to grieve at such a young age and see that kind of tear through a community. So
it's tough. I lost in my senior year of high school. One of the most popular girls in our school died in a car accident related to drugs. And especially in the world we live in today with fentanyl and how it's in, being manufactured in all of these quote unquote prescription drugs that kids order online, it's just frightening. And so anything that we can do to, just, I don't know, hit a nerve or something, I'd like to think that we have some possibility to affect someone's life here.
No, I mean, like so I'm 26, and it absolutely, what you're saying resonates with me, because being 26, I have lost 2 people that I went to high school with. One that I grew up with fairly well, went to the same bus stop and everything, drunk driving and a drug overdose. And it's heartbreaking because a wonderful person, bright future, like doing so well in life, and one mistake that you think won't
Exactly
have a big impact, and it does. And it doesn't just affect you. It
right.
affects
That's the whole thing.
you.
Yeah. Let me, if I just may, and I don't want to, go too far on this point, but when I wrote the original treatment, like I said, at New England Tech, I called it the ripple effect, because that's exactly what it is. Because those of us who are left behind are the ones that have to deal with it for the rest of our lives, and not that the story we're telling is anything new or earth shattering, but I just think it's worth reminding people, that when you choose to do this, and the risks that you take, not just for yourself, but you're risking other people's lives relative to when they're left behind and you're gone. It's horrible. It's just horrible. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be Debbie Downer.
No, I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah, it is.
And I love that we're talking about this, because that's, to me, the whole point of the film that we made, the message that we wanted to send. And just to add to that, what Pamela is saying, in terms of who is left behind and the ripple effect, this film so beautifully encapsulates a community's response and how it's affected because of a loss of a star student to drugs / alcohol / being irresponsible. And the idea that this film could affect change, as Pamela was talking about, being shown to schools, it's a very approachable film, because it's not like we're beating this over your head. It's just a glimpse into a woman's life, into a community's life. So we're hoping that because it's approachable, that people will be able to just take something from this and seek the help that they may need if they're struggling with addiction. And I one of the most beautiful parts of this movie for me is the actual speech at the end. And I think that's exactly what educators or authority figures, that's the kind of conversation I believe needs to happen between young adults and adults, because it's a very heartfelt, sincere plea. And it's, I still tear up every time I see it. So yeah.
Me too.
But you're right, Jordan, because so much of what the educational system uses these days to educate children, and I'm glad they're doing it at a younger age, don't get me wrong, but it's black and white, it's dry. I mean, these kids turn off. If you give them a movie to watch, first of all, it's a movie, and secondly, I think the fact that the woman who is kind of telling it is a principal. It's like, this can happen to her. This can happen to our friends. This can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, to go back to your question, Emily, about our future here, is if anybody comes or has the opportunity to come to Garden State and see our film, if you think this connects to your community, if this thinks to the education department, if you're from the education department, please reach out to us directly, because when this film is finally done with Festival Run, we'll be talking about, the distribution world. And I think the distribution world is in education. So.
I agree.
Absolutely. And are you guys going to be coming to the film festival in person?
I am.
I'm going to make my best effort. I live in Los Angeles, so
Jordan's on the West Coast.
I'm working on a film set.
Great weather over there.
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, I so look forward to meeting you in person, and hopefully the rest of you, the other 2 of you in person. It would be such a pleasure. But if not, I have had such a pleasure speaking with you. Just now. And thank you so much for joining with me. You guys, you can see the Principals Assembly on Saturday, March 25th at the Kingsley Ballroom from 3 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. It has been such a pleasure, and I'm excited to see you there.
Yay. Thank you,
Thank
Emily.
you
I'll
so
see
much
you
for
there.
having us.
Jordan,
Yeah.
it's so nice to see you. And
Good to
thank
see
you,
you too,
Tatiana,
guys.
behind the scenes.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, everybody, and thanks, Garden State Film Festival.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.
Bye.
Bye.